Everybody?
I'm
Okay,
getting
you're echoey again. Why are you echoey again?
here. Try it now. Yep.
That's better, I think.
That better?
I think that's better. All right. What's up, everybody? It's good to be back with you all, back in your life, right? For another edition of Beyond the Behaviors with Miss Chyna. It's good to see you. So you were saying actually right before we got started that this was it for you. Today was the last day of school. How was it?
Yeah, so it's the last day with kids. And then tomorrow we have a clerical day. So, it's always bittersweet, right? You're excited for the end of the year. But then it's always sad too, saying goodbye to your fifth graders, saying goodbye, to those kiddos that you have to hope that they're going to have an okay summer and, everything's going to be safe and healthy for them. So it's always bittersweet.
I'm curious, like how much of that do you do? Like how much of going through the summer with your kids do you actually do? Like what they're going to be doing and, being a part of?
Yeah, so most times I end up doing a summer program in my school district where I get to work with my kiddos and kind of help out social, emotionally, but also do some like reading and math interventions just to help prep them for the school year. I usually try and send home some stuff that they can do during the summer. So like this year, I sent home some Uno games with kids. I sent home like balls so they can play catch, some bubbles to do bubbles outside, because you wouldn't believe how many kids don't ever do those types of things.
That's crazy. I know. It's crazy. That's so nice though that you do that you actually send that stuff home. Is there any way to stay in contact with them?
I do have, so I use Google Voice, which is like, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's an app that you can download where you can generate a free phone number. So you're not giving your personal phone number to families, but you still have a phone number that families can have. That's a way that you could reach out if they ever have questions. You can also set office hours, which is really nice. So if you want to turn them off on the weekend or whatever, they literally can't message you or you won't see it until whenever your office hours kind of open back up. So it's really slick. That's what I use to communicate with parents. It's also nice too because you can make phone calls with that app. So if you were, let's say, at home and not at school and you needed to make a phone call but didn't want to use your phone number or *69, you could use that number too.
Oh, so that is good.
Yeah, I really like that. But for the most part, I'm not in a lot of contact. Every once in a while, you're close with the family and you'll meet at the park or you'll go do something fun or go watch a game. But usually it's more so during summer school. Yeah. A lot of my kids aren't super active,
I'm going no headphones, by the way.
That's okay.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, it was. I like that anyway, the bald head. I hear you. I hear you. Look, I actually think, though, that's the best time and place to build relationships with kids is during the times that we're not required, so to speak, to be with them, or we can go out of our way to be a part of their life and their world.
Mm-hmm. And I think honestly, that's something that I had always anticipated I would do more of, when you're in college and you hear about all the things you can do. But I think working in a Title I school, or I don't know if it's my position specifically, there's so many things you have to be cautious of in regards to parents and, what potential things could take place. If you have a volatile parent or if you have a parent that will kind of skew things, you just have to be extra cautious. So I always take a little extra caution just to be safe.
Have you had volatile parents?
I definitely have. Yes.
I know it's tough. It's tough. Well, it is like, I think diffusing angry parents can be difficult, but not that we were going to go this direction, but I think it's an interesting topic to talk about how to do that because it's really the same process as diffusing kids. It's showing them that you're on the same side with them. I used to always say to a parent, I would say, I'm glad that you're annoyed. I'm glad, like, it's good that you're annoyed. It's good because it means you care. And I'm happy that you care. Like you care about your kid a lot. I care about your kid a lot. And that means we're on the same page. We might have a different way about getting to where we need to go, right? Like you might think I should do one thing. I might think we should do another thing. But the good news is we both want your kid to be successful. And I'm pumped for us together to figure out how to make that happen. And like, once you do that with a parent, then you got the parent hooked, right? They're on your side. And once they're on your side, then you can start working with them.
And I think that kind of ties into our theme tonight, right? We wanted to talk about power statements. We wanted to talk about that language that we can use in those tough situations. Because I feel like what happens is you go into a meeting and you think, oh, this is going to go great. It's going to be fantastic. And then bang, something comes out of left field and you literally don't even know where to go with it. there's things that are being said, everybody's frazzled, and it's like, what do you say? And that's where, where you were saying, I'm glad you're annoyed, I'm glad that you're frustrated, because that means you care. That's an awesome power statement to kind of stick in your back pocket. And remember, when you have
I
a
just
parent
lost
that is
you.
coming towards
I
you,
can't
right?
hear you anymore.
Oh
I don't know
no.
why I can't hear you anymore. I can't hear you anymore at all. That's okay. Let me try my headphones again and see if I can hear you. You went
I
out.
don't know.
There you are. Now you're back.
You can hear me. That means I bet you're listening on Instagram.
I bet
You're
I'm
not.
listening. That's what I think happened, which I actually like better. I actually
Oh,
like it better if I'm listening on Instagram. So that's good.
interesting.
So say again what you were saying. So that's a really good power statement. Why?
I don't know why my screen keeps going dark on Instagram.
You again.
That's part of the issue. Oh, you can't hear me?
No, I got you again.
Interesting.
It's all good. We're good. It's fine.
Okay. They can hear us on Facebook. They can.
Unbelievable.
It is not.
Right.
It is not a video. It's not a good time if you don't have some technical difficulties, right?
Correct.
What
So
else?
tell about the power statement. Tell about the power statement.
Okay,
explain the whole concept of that.
So essentially, I'm hearing feedback from you, just so you know.
I don't know what to do with my audio. What a mess. Hold on a second. Yeah, I don't know why I'm not getting it through my headphones. I was getting it through my headphones and then it just stopped on my headphones. Let me try it again.
Okay, we'll try again.
Go ahead. Talk.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, kind of.
I think what's happening is we're getting feedback from your Instagram playing loud.
Okay, let's try this. How about now?
Can you hear me now? Oh, no. More feedback.
Not on my headphones, I can't. Oh, wait, can I talk?
Hi.
Oh, no.
Nope, still hear it. Thanks for bearing with us, guys. Go ahead and put some questions in the comments. We're talking about power statements. So
what is up with this? Well, we're trying to talk about power statements. We would love to talk about power statements, right? So I got Instagram over here, I got Facebook over here, and I can't figure out my audio. What's up with this?
I feel like it's better now.
Is it better?
Yeah.
Okay, I can hear you.
It's all better. Great. Hi. Nice to see you.
All right. Power statements.
Okay, power statements. So I was just talking about how there's so many different situations that we get ourselves in, whether it be we're sitting in a meeting or we are going to talk to a child's parent, or we get stopped by a teacher in the hallway that has something they want to say, or a kid that's escalated. And these comments or these statements come out of these people's mouths out of left field. And you're like, whoa, I never saw that coming. So having these like little power statements that work in those situations is so beneficial, because you can just take them right out of your back pocket and use them whenever something happens. So like for Brian, when you just said, I am happy that you shared that you're frustrated or annoyed, whatever that was, because that means you care. That's a really good one to stick in your back pocket. Because I think that's all parents want us to know, right? They want us to know that no matter what, like the reason they're mad, the reason they're swearing at us or saying whatever is because they want what's best for their kid. And honestly, that's what we all want, isn't it?
Correct. I got this, by the way. I got it figured out. I got you now properly. So that's why I'm smiling, because I'm so excited by this. But yeah, no, I totally hear you. And I think, it's a great diffuser, right? It's a great way to calm a person down, is to say, whoa, what? This is great. Like, you got tons of energy and I got a lot of energy, and you want your kid to be successful, and so do I, and we're good to go here. Like, let's figure it out together. And by the way, I think that's a good thing to say to kids too, right? Like, I mean, a powerful thing to say to a kid who's upset is, you know what? It's okay to be upset. Like, frustration's okay. Like, it's okay to get annoyed, and it's okay to be, and I like that you care. I'm glad that you care. Caring's good, and I care as much as you do. And the fact that the two of us care as much as we do, there's no question you're going to be successful this year. And I'm going to be here to walk you right through it. And like, taking that mentality with a kid, man, they see you different, don't they?
100%. And that's the thing that I think is so important to remember is everybody just wants to be heard. That's all they want in life. And so another thing to go along with that, though, is if somebody's escalated and they're frustrated and whatever else, you can't sit down and have a rational conversation with them, right? So one of my favorite power statements that I'll say, if you have a parent flying off the handle, right? First off, don't interrupt them. Let them talk. I think one thing that we do as teachers, and it's nothing against us, you know, we want to do our best. We want to prove that we're doing our best. But I think sometimes as a teacher, we jump to defending ourselves right away, or we jump to defending the situation without hearing what the parent fully has to say, right? Like we're automatic defense, trying to dodge everything that they're saying before the parent gets to share everything. So then what happens?
Same with kids, by the way. Same with
Yeah.
kids, right? Same thing happens a lot of times with kids. But then go on. So then what happens?
They don't feel heard. And then you have somebody that's getting more frustrated and more angry because they're like, man, I'm coming to you because I care and I'm concerned, but you're not listening to me. You're not hearing what I have to say.
Right.
And so I think letting them talk is really, really important. But when they're irrational and they're not necessarily at a place where it's comfortable, it's okay to say, hey, I'm so happy you shared those concerns with me. Let's schedule a time where we can sit down and really, really talk about this. That's one of my favorite things to say, because then you have a chance to get other team members there if you need to. If it is a volatile parent, you also have a chance to have other team members there to help in case something gets skewed or something is said. So I think and then you give cool down time, right? Everybody needs cool down time. So I'm like, oh, I really appreciate that. What's your schedule for next week? Or what's your schedule tomorrow? What times are you available? Right. They feel comforted in the fact that they're going to be heard. Yes. But then, hey, you get a time to problem solve as a team. And you also have other people there supporting you while that parent or whoever is hopefully calmed down by that point.
And I like to thank a kid or a parent before they do something, So generally in the English language, the words thank you become after somebody does something, right? Like somebody does something for you and you say thank you. And I think that's good. But I think with parents and hard to reach kids, it's better to thank them before, right? Thank you so much for picking up that piece of paper, even though I know you didn't drop it. I really appreciate you picking it up anyway, buddy. Thanks for doing it. Thank you. I know you. Thanks for doing. I know you didn't drop it. I know. I saw it there when you walked in, but thanks for picking it up anyway. Versus pick that piece of paper up right now, young man. See the difference? Like when we talk to a kid like that and we're bringing them in the mix, right? That's really the goal is, and I think a lot of that stems from kids need to feel power and control, right? There's that, and it's not just kids. I think it's people in general like to feel power. They like to feel like they're in charge. And a lot of the kids that you and I talk about, they don't feel that in their life. They often feel out of control in many aspects of their life. So giving them some control back can be a really powerful thing for them.
And these people in general, they don't want to be bad people. They want to be good people. So even though they're coming, fully armed and ready to kind of fly off the handle and say things, that doesn't mean that they mean it meanly, So I think it's okay to say, I can tell you really care, or I can tell this is really important to you and I appreciate that. So recognizing too that they want to make it better, or I can tell that you really want to fix this or you want to make it better. That alone is another step that can make people feel validated.
Scramble the letters in the word listen and you get the word silent. That's an interesting thing. I actually learned that in addiction recovery. And, and that was for me when I got into recovery, I would say that was probably the hardest thing was I didn't know how to listen to people. Everything was always everybody else's fault and it was blaming other people. And it was, and what happened, one of the reasons that recovery meetings are so powerful is because you don't have a choice. Like you're sitting at a meeting and when it's not your turn to talk, you don't get a chance to talk. Like you have to sit there and listen to people. And I think there's a tremendous skill in life in learning how to act interested when you're bored. That was a skill that I used to work on with my students a lot because it's true though, because like a lot of my kids, they were the kids that they had to show everybody how bored they were, right? Like they had to make noise. Oh, this is so stupid. I don't care. And they would have to put their heads down, and I would always say to them, listen, you guys, this is about pretending sometimes. It's about playing the game. It's about showing that you can go like this, smile and nod, and you don't need to know what's going on. But us teachers, we love the kids who smile and nod, right? It makes us feel good about ourselves. I know when I'm teaching a seminar and I have a big group of people, I always like and look at the ones more who are smiling and nodding at me. And the truth is, I have no really idea if they're paying attention more. I just know that they're at least good at pretending at it, right? But that is a really important skill to learn and to teach kids how to do.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing that I was going to say too is, we were kind of talking about how escalated teachers and escalated students, how they're similar in a lot of ways. And the one thing that I don't think we ever really touch on is like us as teachers, right? So I'm a special ed teacher. You were a special ed teacher, and we think about when we were special ed teachers or when we are special ed teachers, we don't always make everyone happy. Okay. And just like admin doesn't always make every single teacher happy. And sometimes myself, I'll go to my administrator and I'll be upset and I'll say something, and it doesn't seem like it's a big deal at that time. They might say, hey, let's sit down and schedule a meeting for it, but it might not seem like a big deal to them. And the one thing that they went over in my grad school classes was that, so to me, it might be a very big deal, but to my admin, that might just be one small piece to his whole pie. To me, it's my whole pie, right? Because I'm dealing with it like in the moment, but to them, it's just one small slice. And so when I think about when a general ed teacher comes to me and they're fired up, right? They're frustrated because this kid did something in class and the rest of their kids saw it. And now what are they going to say to the rest of their kids and whatever else is going to happen? I'm like, man, they're so upset. What can I do? But I have to remember, like, to them, that's their whole pie. Like in that moment, that's what they're really, really stressed about. And so even though it's a small piece of mine, I have to recognize that, everybody's kind of dealing with things from a different standpoint. And once again, it's okay to say, hey, thank you for sharing that with me. Let's schedule a time to sit down so we can all talk about it and brainstorm as a team to help better support these kids, right?
Yep. The acronym that I like to use that goes along with this is called L.A.A.D, and it's L.A.A.D, and it stands for listen, acknowledge, agree, defer, right? So, so for example, right, kid, Mr. Mendler, this lesson sucks. Well, I just heard it, right? So the listening part was done, right? The next part, acknowledge, right? So, Mr. Mendler, this lesson sucks. Whoa, 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 whoa. I hear you. See how I've acknowledged, right? Now I'm going to do the third step, which is, this is the hardest part for most people. I'm going to agree, right? So Mr. Mendler, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're agreeing, but it's what you're saying is or might be true. So it goes like this, ready? Whoa, or Mr. Mendler, this lesson sucks. Whoa, 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 time out. I hear you. And you know what? I'm not even saying you're wrong. I'm not. Listen, I teach a lot of lessons, okay? 180 days a year times 6 lessons a day. That's 1,044 lessons a year. Some of them might not be great, all right? And today might not have been my best effort. That said, listen what I'm telling you. That said, right now, this moment, probably not the best time for you and I to have this conversation. So thank you for waiting until then, right? Well, thank you for waiting until after class, and we'll finish this conversation then. And then you walk away, right? And as you're walking away, of course, right? There it is. There's a screenshot of it. As you're walking away, what will often the kid or a kid do under their breath, right? They'll do that little mumble grumble, whatever, you're so stupid. I hate your guts anyway. And of course, really what they're saying is, excuse me, Mr. Mendler, Miss Chyna, right now I have to call you a couple names under my breath, because if I don't, I'm going to look like a wimp in front of the entire class, and I can't look like a wimp in front of the entire class. So please be the mature adult with a college degree and continue walking away from me, because I have to eat lunch with them, and I have to ride the bus with them, and I have to be on the playground with them, and I have to play sports with them, and I have to be around them all day long. After all, Mr. Mendler, what do you tell us to do when someone calls us a name on the playground? You tell us to just turn and
walk away.
Well, how come you can't? After all, Mr. Mendler, what do you tell us to do when someone says something to us that we don't like? You tell us to just ignore it, right? Well, how come you can't? And if you did, I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir. Because that's basically what they're saying in the only way they can say it. They can't say it any other way. So they'll mumble a couple words and that's really the last word, right? Let the kid have the last word. Powerful.
And it's always so funny to me. I had a kid that had come down to my room because they were mad about the lesson in class, right? Did not want to do it. And my role's fine. You don't want to do it in class. That's fine. But you'll have to come down here and do it anyways. They're doing it. And he's like, man, this is boring. This is stupid. Like literally getting to the point where he's yelling. He's getting upset. And I said, listen to me. I said, look at me, listen, because was not listening. Still just going off the handle. I said, you are right. When I look at this assignment, this is boring. Right. But you know what? I'm a teacher, and there's a lot of boring things that I still have to do because that's part of being an adult and having a job. as a student, your job is to do boring work sometimes. And you're going to have to continue to do work to graduate. It doesn't mean that it's fun or that it's right, but that's part of our job.
But it's so not right. Like, if you really think about it, right, that's so not right. That's how it is, right? Like, and I know that's how it is. And I was the same way. I remember vividly, right? Kids complaining about, I live in New York State right now. I'm moving in about a month, a little less than a month, but about kids complaining about the state exam, right? Because I used to teach them. So I would teach the English. It's called, in New York State, it's called the Regents exam, where it's basically the state exam. And I would have to get my 11th graders through it. And there were certain buzzwords that the people at the state, you know, that term, the people at the state, that they liked, right? So like the word metaphor, personification, alliteration, simile. And I used to tell my students, listen, you don't necessarily have to get them right. Like, just make sure the word metaphor is in your essay. Like, usually there's someone at the state reading like 100 of these a day. So if they look for those words and they check it off. But kids would say, well, Mr. Mendler, I don't get why we have to do this. And I would literally give them the phone number to the education department in Albany, New York. I would say, here's the phone number. I have no idea why you have to know this. When you know, let us know, right? And literally, like, here you go. And I actually had a kid call from my room one time, right? So he's like, I'm going to call right now. So I'm like, have at it. So he calls from my room. He sits on hold for 43 straight minutes and nobody answered. And he looks at me and he goes, yo, Mr. Mendler, I have a question. And I said, what? He goes, is there anyone even at the state? And I said, I don't even know, right? But it was like, you know, crazy. But, you know, I don't know, bro. I don't make the rule. It's the same with the rules. It was the same. Mr. Mendler, like, what do you care if I wear a hat? Like, why can't I wear a hat? You wear hats. I used to say, I'm with you, dude. I agree. You think I wrote this rule? I didn't make this rule. The administrator's office, go knock on her door. It's her thing. Right? I'm just the cop here. I'm the one telling you got to take it off, but I didn't write the rule. Go to the place who did. You know, that's how cops should pull people over. Here, go to the, you know, I don't know. It's not mine. I agree with you. When I'm not working, I speed right here through myself. I fly right through myself. But right now, between this time and this time, I get paid to give people like you tickets. Sorry, here you go. Right? Like, it would diffuse so many more people because you'd be like, oh, okay, well, he flies right here through himself when he's right. Like, what else are you gonna say? I don't know.
No, and okay, so here's kind of a funny story. So state testing, right? Everybody loves state testing. It's fantastic. Sarcasm if you can't tell. But one of my kiddos has a lot of test anxiety, right? So before the test is like totally melting down. And this is one of those things that we were talking about, is like people just want to be validated. So totally melting down.
So what was the meltdown? What were you seeing?
Kicking the chair, like screaming, yelling that they couldn't do it, crying, like really, really sweaty. And I said, hey, listen to me. I want you to know that I think this is the most stupid test that is out there. I said, it really, really makes me mad that they make kids do this, because kids get so overwhelmed from it, you know. And this isn't an accurate representation of what the kid knows, but that's a whole nother topic. But I said, I think this is the most stupid test they can make you do, because it's going to take many days and it's really frustrating for you. But the only thing that I care about is that you get it done. So your job is to get it done, you know, do your best.
Yeah.
If you have to skip by some, that's what happens, you know. And so the kid ended up doing the test. But this is what's so funny. So this kid, no matter what, is always arguing, always has these new ideas, always has these things that he wants to negotiate. And I said, you know, you should do something like try and run for president someday, or try and be vice president. So the other day he's telling me, he's like, Miss Chyna, I know what I want to do when I get older. Well, first I'm going to be a pilot, and then I'm going to be a YouTuber so I can get to meet more people. And then I'm going to run for mayor. And he said, you know what I'm going to do when I run for mayor? Do you know what? And he's literally practicing like a persuasive speech, right? So he's like telling people that he's going to run for mayor. He's like, are you sick of paying a lot of money for your taxes? This is a third grader, mind you. He's like, if you vote for me for mayor, I'm going to lower taxes so we can all have more money and more power. And I'm going to cancel state tests.
That's it. He's a winner.
That's why he wants to run. He wants to run so he can cancel state tests and lower taxes. I'd vote for him.
He's a winner. I did the same. I was laughing when you were saying that, because it's so crazy that you say that, because I used to do the same thing. Like, so I think one of the mistakes that we as educators frequently make when it comes to state testing is that we put a lot of pressure on the kids, right? Like anxiety affects performance, right? Wouldn't you agree with that? Like in life in general?
Yes.
Exactly. No, let me be clear. Like I think for some people in the world, anxiety affects performance in a positive way. Like there's certain, you know, you look at like Tiger Woods or like Tom Brady, like some of these athletes that can play in front of, you know, millions of people, and I think their anxiety makes them better. But I don't think that that's true for most people. And I think it's certainly not true for most kids. Yet that's what we do, right? So a kid is sitting down for a test and we talk about how important it is, right? And the reality is it's not. And that's what I used to say to kids too. So I would say to them, you guys, listen, you're about to take this test, and everybody in this school has been telling you how important this test is. I mean, we got people wearing matching t-shirts, and we got people bringing in pom-poms and all this stuff. And let me be clear, this test is completely irrelevant to your life. It does not matter even a little bit. Well, why does everybody says it matters so much, Mr. Mendler? Because they're not as smart as me. They're not. I'm smarter than them, okay? And listen to what I'm telling you. It doesn't matter. Now, stay with me here, because I think it's very important when you tell a kid what not to focus on, you got to give them something to focus on instead, right? So you have to get, you know, it's sort of like you can't just tell a kid to stop hitting, right? You can't do that. You have to give them something they can do with their anger and aggression and emotion instead, right? So I would tell them, listen, the only two things that matter, and these are the only two things that matter, are attitude and effort. That's it. Those are the only two things that every human being in the world controls. You control the attitude you take in a situation, and you control the effort you put in, and you do not control everything else. Outcomes in the world happen to you. You can frequently in life, you know how many times I've been to an airport and I'm through security and I'm at the gate and I'm sitting there waiting and then delayed, canceled. Why? I don't know. They don't even tell you half the time, right? That moment, what do I control, right? I control the attitude that I take toward the person telling us that the flight's delayed and the effort that I put in to getting where I need to go. Those are the only two things I can control. And what I tell the kids is, listen, whether it's this test that you're about to take or it's you wiping a table at McDonald's at your first job, doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the attitude you take and the effort you put in. And so really the truth is, right, it shouldn't matter that it's a test or that, you know, the kid, you know, when they're little and they're putting their chairs on their desks for the day to end. Do it right. Do it the best you possibly can in that moment. And when you start to develop habits where you always give your best, right? You do the best you can and you do it with a positive attitude, you will overall be successful in life. And that's the key, right? The key is to teach them, because if they focus on any one thing, right? That one thing becomes too valuable in both directions, by the way. Like I think in both directions. I think some kids, let's call them, just for the sake of it, the smart kids, right? I think sometimes they don't have to work as hard. And so they kind of coast through school. And then my brother's a good example of this. My brother's brilliant, right? My brother's a doctor. He's a brilliant, but like he didn't really understand like what work was until he got to college. And he was competing against people that were at the same level of him. I call them smart fools, right? It's kind of like when you're the smartest of a bunch of fools. You can think you're smart, but okay, you're like the smartest of the fools. Great, right? But what happens when you're with the same caliber of people?
Exactly. No, I 100% agree. I I have to tell you this story because I thought about it while you were talking about this.
What's up, Coach Kennedy? Good to see you, man.
So the same kid, right? So the same kid that's having the meltdown on the test. And I said, you know, I don't understand why state testing is taking place, whatever I'm saying. It doesn't make sense to me. We have to do it anyways. Do your best. I have another kid in the room, and this kid is like known for always kind of being like in the background and just like spits out these funny comments, right? This kid in the background goes, the person that makes the tests must be a Karen. And I was like, how do you even know, how do you even know what that means,
Whoa.
a little fourth grader knows what a Karen is, and
Right.
those are the ones writing the tests.
They
So
listen. They
so
listen,
cute.
though. They listen to everything and they learn from everything that we say and everything that we do. And that's why it's always important to remember that. It's always important to remember that, how we behave and how we act it's always modeling. You're always, and that's oftentimes the key with kids. It's constantly modeling the behavior that you want to see from them, right? Modeling to them what we want to see from them, which isn't always easy to do. I think sometimes it's easier said than done because our buttons get pushed, right? We talk about beyond the behaviors, right? Buttons get pushed and it's easy to react, respond, and want to fight back. Those are instincts that frequently come to us, And I know for me, like, I know when those things happen, like when I react, respond, and want to fight back, in general, I don't make sound decisions. I don't. Like, I need to back off. I'm one of those people who needs to look at things from different perspectives, to tiptoe around. But, and I think that all comes back to, we've talked about this a couple times, focusing on controlling ourselves. Right? Controlling what we can really control. I think sometimes we get so focused on trying to change the kid, right? And it's hard to change other people, And so that can be a frustrating undertaking. And when we start to get frustrated, it's easy for our fuse to become a lot shorter. And once that happens, it takes the spark and the gasoline for there to be an explosion, right? It takes two different elements, and usually the adult and the kid are a mix of those two.
And then let's just think about too, for state testing, they test math, reading, and writing, right? Sometimes science, depending what grade you are. Just think about those kids that have always struggled with math, reading, and writing and science, but hey, are awesome at dance, or they are absolutely awesome at singing or drawing or any of these other crazy talents, coding. There's never any time that they really get to shine on those types of things. They don't get to show where they're at that. The state isn't looking at how awesome this kid is coding in fourth grade, but hey, he can't write a paragraph to save his life. You're never going to see what he can actually write, but he has all the ideas there. It's just, I feel for those kids because they're sitting there and they're thinking, man, I'm not very good at this. Doesn't mean that that's the truth, but in their head, they're thinking, I'm not good at this.
Correct.
These 20 kids around me can handle it. They don't have to go to Miss Chyna's room for extra help. How am I going to get this done? I feel for those kids because they never get to show that really, really, powerful side of them. That's why it's so important as teachers to make sure we're drawing on those things. Like, hey, I know that they're not practicing it in school, but that doesn't mean that you can't be an illustrator. That doesn't mean you're not going to be an artist. That doesn't mean that you're not going to work for Michael's someday or wherever it might be, a YouTuber.
Right. You have to be great at one thing. I think I might have even told you this, that I had a teacher when I was in high school. I'll never forget it. It was in 9th grade. And he told us, he said, you have to be great in the world at one thing. You don't have to be like school. I remember him saying school is very different from real life, right? In school, to be successful, you have to be great at multiple things, right? Math, science, ELA, social studies, art, music, phys ed, foreign language. I mean, I just rattled off 8 without thinking, right? In real life, you have to be great at one. When's the last time you went to the dentist and said, tell me about the War of 1812? No, I'm not opening until you show me how to diagram a sentence. Like, I don't care what you do, like clean my teeth and do it right. And or you fly the airplane I'm on, get me up and get me down and do it in the right place. I don't really care what else you know how to do in the world. Right. And I think sometimes, and so what happens for a lot of kids is the world really opens up to them. The world becomes a better, again, I'm an example of a person like that, where for me, school was hard because I'm disorganized and I can't find things and I lose things and when you're really disorganized, school can be a hard place. And so, right. But when you get in the world and you're like, oh, wait, I only have to be great at like 1 or 2 things. Cool. I think I could do that. Right. And then you get focused on what those 1 or 2 things are. And that's why the phrase gifted and talented has always kind of gotten to me, because I think there are people in the world that are more gifted and more talented than other people. But I also believe that everybody has gifts and talents. And like sometimes you just have to look harder to find them. But when you start to label people a certain way, it's very easy for people to believe, well, they didn't put me in the gifted and talented class, so I must not be that, right? And that's the quickest way to give up. The quickest way in general to give up is to not be successful, right? So think of it. I always say in my seminars, I teach a concept where and John, if you have this slide, the success slide, but think of it like a triangle, right? And there's success is at the top of the triangle, and the point to the right is competence, right? Because success breeds competence. We become successful, we start to become competent. Once we become competent, we start to have confidence. There it is, right? Think about so you can see that cycle. Think about a little ball that spins between those three words, because those three words breed each other. They're breeders of each other. Once I have success, I start to feel confident, which makes me more successful, which gives me more confidence, which makes me more confident. And the thing about this cycle is there are a lot of kids that we work with who have never tasted any of these three. They don't know what success is because they've never really had it. They don't know what competence is because they've never really been good at anything. And because they've never had success, and in their mind, they've never been good at anything, then they totally lack confidence. And I think sometimes as an educator, it's really powerful to, metaphorically, of course, shove a kid into that cycle and make them feel one of those things. And I think the easiest one to make them feel is success, because we can rig things, right? Like you can do an open book, open note test or quiz, or like I would do things where, I would say you get a 5x7 or 4x6 note card, cram as many notes on it as you want. You get to use that on your test, right? Like the goal, making you successful and understanding that once I do that, that's going to lead to these other things. And once you become those other things, it starts to just become this amazing cycle. And the thing is, I speak about myself because, most of my life, personally, I believe that I lived not in that cycle. But the last probably 5 years as a professional, I've been in that cycle. And once you're in it, it's hard to be stopped. Like you just start to roll. And good things start to happen, because of your belief and your confidence and your, all three of those things. And so getting kids to focus on that, and teachers to, and this was I think this was a year, you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was a year where, there were more kids, at least from what I was hearing, that were failing early on than in most any other years. And when you have a lot of kids failing early on, that's a bad situation, right? Because now, right, when kids go down, they don't go alone. They take other people down with them. And if that's starting early on in the school year, you're in big trouble. So success has to come first. And the last thing I'll say is about this is we know this in every aspect of our lives, really, right? Like, and if you look at like what you do with kids, I mean, when my kids play sports, or my daughter, they play t-ball. We put the ball on a tee. That's not baseball, but we do it anyway. Why? Because we know the kid needs to feel success. They got to hit the ball. Then there's graduation to underhand coach pitch, but you're not actually trying to throw a strike. If you're the coach, you're literally trying to hit the bat, right? Because you're like, wow, I need the kid to be successful. And then there's graduation from that to overhand done the same way. And then if you do it right, and I use baseball, fill in whatever you want. I don't care if it's dance or it's art or it's music. Eventually that day comes if you do it properly, where you go out back, right? And you were going to do it the same way you always did it, except all of a sudden your kid looks at you and they're like, no, mom, no, dad, no, coach, back up, throw it harder. I know I could hit it. You're not throwing it hard enough. Throw it harder, right? Give me more math problems, teacher. Give me a little bit more reading, teacher. Give me a little bit more, right? But not if success didn't come first. And, we know that in so many aspects, but what happens sometimes in school is we got some teachers throwing 90-mile-an-hour fastballs at the kid, and the kid's like, bro, I never played t-ball. Right. And they're just getting peppered by these fastballs going, right. And there's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide.
And I think just as humans in general, we kind of forget that not everything has to be a job, So I think sometimes we get in this mindset, and I'm speaking more for adults, I guess, a little bit, is that We feel like we have to do a job that's going to make us money, that's going to pay the bills, that's going to help us survive. But we don't ever like try and find something that we're really excited about
Yeah.
to help us get there, right? So you have all these people either being mechanics or plumbers or maybe even doctors or lawyers or whoever that are doing it not for the right reason. And if you ever had a job, like when you're going to college or whatever you were doing, like I worked at gas stations and restaurants, and yeah, I didn't mind working there, but I wasn't putting in 120% of my effort because, to be honest, I was paying the bills. I wasn't doing it because I loved it. Then you get into teaching and you do something that you really love, and the effort is 100% there. Just think if everybody in the world was doing something that they were really excited about, what quality of work they'd be producing in everything, right?
I know,
So
but
the
I
whole
feel
world
like
would be a different place.
I agree, but I feel like there's some jobs in the world that you just couldn't be excited about. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know, but I had one actually. There was one. I had one. I did it in college. I only lasted like one shift. I didn't last long. But it was at a factory. I was working at a factory, and I literally for like 7 straight hours was picking up a package from here and putting it down over here. And I remember just thinking, I'd rather be dead. Like, if this has to be my life, like I would never. But people have to do it, and look, I agree though. I think, and I think one of the issues sometimes for kids is they get caught up in jobs they can make money in, right? So what job can I make money in? And that's such a trick question, because the reality of the answer to that, right? What if you want to make a lot of money in your life? There's one answer: be great at whatever you do. Figure out what you love and become really great at it. And I don't care what it is, right? The best plumber, the best electrician, they make a lot of money. So figure out what you love, get great at it, and the money will follow you. And that's what I used to teach kids.
And it doesn't always have to be math and reading. It might be that you're really going to continue to practice drawing, or you're really going to practice dancing or singing or whatever it is. It doesn't, and that's where we get lost. We get lost in the curriculum and we forget those important things. We forget to have those conversations. We're like, hey, you 100% can do this, even though they don't talk about it in school. You can make money doing this. And if you're not doing that as a full-time job, you'll have a part-time job, and that will be your full-time job someday, right?
That's right.
We just need to have those conversations with kids. It's so important.
Did you always want to be a teacher? Like, did you know that you wanted to be a teacher when you were a kid? How did you get to teaching?
Yeah, so that's the funny part is for me, I was always going towards money, right? So I'm like, I am going to be a doctor. So all throughout high school, I'm like, AP class, I'm going to be a doctor. That's what it's going to be. And I didn't explore any other classes. Like, it was AP chemistry, everything you can think of. And then I graduated, and then I went for pre-med for like a month, or not a month, like a semester. And I was like, I don't really like that. So I was like, I'm going to do business, because you can do a lot with business, right? You can still make money. Maybe I'll go on to be a lawyer. I was in an econ class, literally sitting in economics. And I was like, man, if this is going to have anything to do with what I'm doing, I don't want to be any part of it.
Really?
But I'd never wanted to be a teacher, because it was like, teachers don't make a lot of money. Teachers don't have this. If you can't teach, right? And so I just felt like that wasn't something that I wanted to do. And then I ended up going for an intro class, and I fell in love with it. And I'm like, man, why didn't I think of this sooner? Which I should have saw the signs, because I was like a figure skating coach. I also like worked at the youth YMCA, and I loved being with kids. So I should have seen that sooner. But sometimes, you just kind of end up going down that path. And it's funny, because here we are now, right? I'm teaching, but then I'm also doing like other marketing business strategies that I am passionate about. So now I like it, right? So you just have to find whatever you're excited about.
It's one of the things that I like about the profession is that, you got a lot of creative people and it's teaching's one of the rare fields where you know how much money you're going to make on the first day of your first year for the rest of your life, right? Like there's no, I mean, it's very, which by the way is a bad thing sometimes, right? But it's also sometimes a good thing, right? Like when the world is not going well, it's secure and it's safe and it's kind of got that, that part of it, but it's, but when, and when, and so I don't know what I was going to say. I do that frequently. You know what that tells me? That tells me my meds have worn off.
Oh no. No, I know when you have it right there and then it just disappears on you. The one thing that I wanted to say is, the question I want to ask you, do you have any like power statements that you would use like when you were just really irritated. So actually, here's my question for you. Just out of curiosity, what was your trigger? Like as a teacher, like what was the one thing that kids did that
There
like
was two.
really pushed your buttons?
So there was two things. And I worked really, really hard at not allowing my buttons to be pushed. That was a huge focus for me, was working on myself. But there were two. And I'm not going to say the words because I just, there's certain words in society you just don't say now, but there were kids who would say it. And the first word was the F word, to describe a non-heterosexual person, right? You're right. So when they would use that word, and they would use the word retard, and that anytime kids use those, and they knew it, they knew that those were my buttons. Was anytime I would hear those two words, like I didn't really care if they would drop a F-bomb, like that never really bothered me, because usually, like when a kid was saying like, you know, the F-bomb, they were annoyed at themselves, or they were annoyed at something that they did, like, oh shit, you know, like that. I probably shouldn't do that, but right. But like that, you know, people do that, and you're like, okay, right. But when you're, you know, speaking about an entire group, and the retard one hits me hard, because, you know, I remember being a kid and people saying that, you know, like, that's a retard class. Why do you go to that class? And so anytime I would hear those words, I would get triggered. And I would immediately do the like, what, like who said, you know, go to the basically places that I teach everyone not to go is where I would go instinctively, you know? That was those were it though. There wasn't many others. I also didn't like when kids would fight with each other. Like I could deal with you, you know, yelling at me or being annoyed at me or cussing me out. But when they would get on each other, that bothered me a lot, because, you know, I wanted the kids to care about each other. Like I wanted to build a family. I was one of those people, if there was a fight, I would get in the middle of it. I'm not telling other people to do that, but I would, because I didn't like kids hitting each other. Like, and so, you know, I would say that was probably it though, you know, really not much else. Other teachers sometimes.
Yeah. Did you have them like a power statement or certain things that you would say in response to those? Because, you know, when things like that happen, they kind of make us frustrated. We're like, whoa, I don't know where to go with that. Really, there's some other things I'd like to say, but I probably can't say them in school.
Yeah, I like the I feel statements, right? So like, I feel really upset when you use that language, and I'm trying to understand why they need to use it. Like, you know, and the thing is, what's funny, you say power statements, like I actually think I probably used more questions, right? Because I think questions kept me calmer than statements. And the other thing for kids who like to argue, which I often had many of them, statements were fuel for them, right? I said, sit down. No, yes, no, yes, no, yes. Boom, you're in a power struggle, right? Versus, hey, come here, I want to talk to you. Can you please explain to me why you think it's okay to stand instead of sit? I'm curious. Like, why do you think, right? We don't use words like that. It's, hey, come here. I'm curious. Who in your life talks that way, where you think that's an okay way to talk to me or to our class? Because I don't think that's you talking in there. Who is talking in there? Do you want to tell me a little bit about where you're getting these words from, and why you think they're funny? Like, notice how when I use a question, I disarm the argument. And that's really the goal. You know, the goal is to take an argument away from a kid before it even starts.
We should rename that. We should call those power questions.
You know, right? I was going to say that too. Yeah. Like when you had put power statements, I was thinking that, because I was like, you know, I like in general, and that's one of my favorite strategies with oppositional kids that I teach teachers. If you have oppositional kids, pick one day of your life. I don't care what the day it is. And from the minute you wake up in the morning until the minute you go to bed at night, no matter who comes in front of you, no matter what they do, no matter what they say, for one full day, you're only allowed to use questions and see what happens. Right? Mr. Mendler, what? What's the homework going to be? I don't know. What do y'all think it should be? You think it should be 10 problems, 15 problems? How about I give you 20 problems and you pick whichever 5 you want? What do you think about that? Mr. Mendler, what? What's the consequence going to be if I break that rule? I don't know. That's a good question. What's it going to take to get you to stop calling people names? I mean, you and I kind of both know the first 10 things I've tried this year haven't worked. Do you have any ideas for me? Like, see, notice how when I use a question, again, that it's back to that focal point that we always talk about of changing us to change the kid, right? Like when I change me, and by the way, it's with your wife or your honey, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? Good question. Where would you like to go? Like that's always your answer with the significant other. And the thing is, usually they answer, right? Usually when you do that, well, I think you should just give us 10 problems. And we should, okay, 10. Are you sure you're going to get 10 done? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, think about it. How many do you actually think you can get done? Well, I actually think 5. Okay. And by the way, I'm just curious, like, I'm sure this won't happen, but if it does, like if you show up tomorrow and those 5 aren't done, let's figure out right now, what should I do in that moment, right? If they're not done, should I get annoyed? Should I be frustrated? Should you stay in during recess? Why don't you explain to me what should happen? I mean, I know it won't happen, but if it does, notice how I'm going down the line and I'm continuing to preempt whatever comes up, right? Seeing a couple steps ahead with kids.
And I think that actually kind of helps kids too, like work through different life scenarios, right? So they have to think of a way that they should respond. And that's something that we're trying to do as teachers, is we're trying to teach these kids how to problem solve in real life situations and how to stand up for themselves. Somebody had said something earlier about, it's something we should be teaching is we should be teaching kids to stand up for themselves. And I think sometimes we forget about that too, and that's one of those things. If you have a kid that's escalated and frustrated and they're sitting there and they might be yelling at you, but they're saying, I don't understand why this is happening. I tried to do this and they're trying to tell you what's going on, listening to them and saying, gosh, wow, would you tell me more about that? You know what? That sounds like a valid reason to be upset. Did you ever tell your teacher about that? You're right. You shouldn't have to do that assignment. Or you're right. You shouldn't have to finish that. I think sometimes listening to them just gives us exactly what they need. And that helps them learn how to stand up for themselves. Because if kids don't learn how to stand up for themselves now, how are they going to do it in a workplace? We do it now, right?
It's incredible, actually, when you do this exercise and this activity. It's incredible to see how many statements teachers use in a day. Like when I teach a workshop and I challenge them to do it, right? So I say to them, pick one day of your life, minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed at night, only questions for one day and see what happens. And the reason I love that strategy so much is because it's unbelievably easy to understand and incredibly hard to implement. Right. So it's one of those ones when you hear me say it or somebody who does it frequently do it, you're like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And then you try to do it yourself and you're like, what? Like, I'm so used to saying, hey, sit down, take that mask off, right? Pick up your, take that hat off, like whatever the statement is, we're so used to saying it and rephrasing into a question. Again, that's the goal, right? I change me, I change everything around me. Let me disarm the argument. I always want to disarm the argument before the argument happens. And that's a fantastic way to disarm, to use a question. And it's good with everybody. It works. That's a great way to manage as an administrator. Use questions with your teacher. Same concept. Pick one day. And from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed with teachers, you're only allowed to use questions and see what happens. All of a sudden, everyone on your staff will start making the same decisions you were going to make anyway. But by them making them, they're more empowered, right? I mean, you would rather decide what you're doing this weekend than have me decide what you're doing this weekend, right? Like if I try to teach you and be like, what are you talking about? Like, you're not telling me what to do, right? But if you so what right now, and I say, okay, but if you show up late to that, what should the consequence be? Like you can actually play that out for yourself. And once you do that for yourself, there's much better chance you're going to follow through.
And these questions, the questions that you're talking about, I think it's a lot like that choice language that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where you have to practice. So if it's not something that you are good at, you have to be very intentional about practicing, whether it be in the car, whether it be at school. And I'll be honest, anytime that you start something like that, so you start using choice language or you start like rephrasing thing in the ways of questions, it's going to be hard and things are going to come out awkward sometimes, You're going to be talking to a kid and they're going to be like, what kind of question is that? That makes no sense for what I'm doing. But I think that practice is what helps you implement it. And I think sometimes we get hung up on the fact that it's not comfortable, so we just don't do it.
That whole concept, like I remember the one that I hear frequently in schools from adults to kids is the phrase, we don't talk to adults like that. Like that phrase is so common in schools with kids that talk back, or that we don't talk to adults like that. I'll talk to you however I want. No, you won't. Yes, I will. No, see how my beginning, right? We don't talk to adults like that was the gasoline being poured on the spark, right? If I go in and say, come here privately, right? Come here. Hey, listen, let's just, I want to understand, like, where in your life have you learned to talk to people that way? Like, who talks to you that way, that you think that's an okay way to talk to me? Like, I'm just curious, right? Notice how there's no accusation. There's no, I'm coming at you. It's just, I'm just curious to know more about you, right? And when we take that approach, you see the kid melt, right? They melt. And all of a sudden they're like, well, that's how my dad talks to my mom. Got it. Okay. So, I just want to make sure I understand. So you live with your dad and your mom? Well, sometimes when my dad comes home, okay, well, he doesn't come home. How often? Well, like 5 nights a week. And sometimes when he comes home, he smells like alcohol. Like, see how by using that question, it can take me into such depth with certain kids versus we don't talk to adults like that, which there's no education there. There's no growth. There's no me making you better, right? And that's fundamentally, as educators, what we do, right? Fundamentally, our job is to make people better. You know, I used to work with a colleague. We got to wrap up soon because I got to get upstairs with my kids. But I used to, because I could do this all day. But I used to work with a colleague who had the phrase called ABT, and that phrase always stood for always be teaching. Always be teaching. And she would say NBP, never be punishing, always be teaching. They don't know how to walk in a room. Show them how. They don't know how to say please and thank you. You can complain that they don't know how to say please and thank you, or you could show them how to say please and thank you. And you could put the same energy that you put into planning that ELA lesson or that math lesson or that science lesson. You could put that same energy into building a lesson on please and thank you, and watch what happens, right? Make manners your focus. Make manners your focus. I used to say that all the time. I might not have the smartest kids, and my kids might not always pass the state exam, but when they're done in my class, I will have the most well-mannered kids in the entire school. And manners are the foundation, because you know how it is, right? Like, you're teaching and a kid gets annoyed at another kid and they're like, yo, shut the hell up. No, you shut the hell up. And like, that's it's whoa, dude, instead of yo, shut the hell up, it's how about it's excuse me. Can you please be quiet? Like, let's say it like that instead of like this. Notice how I've just taken what they've done and just turn it right into my lesson, you know? And that's the part of teaching that I think sometimes gets overlooked, is that, you know, that instinctive sort of, the kid brings you a silver platter and they're like, here's a lesson. I'm asking you to teach me, right? But sometimes we get so caught up in the lesson that we planned over here that we're missing the lessons that the kids drop in our lap, you know?
And that's the thing too, is it's just one of those things. As a teacher, you have to realize that it's not always about you. It's not being disrespectful to you. But let's think about the kids that have only ever seen like South Park in the background, or, you know, Saw in the background on the TV, right? That's what they think is normal. Like they've never heard any other conversation.
Correct.
They see mom and dad come home and they're fighting and they're swearing and they're hitting each other. And then they come to school and act like that. That kid's probably never, ever heard the word please or thank you. They've never heard an I feel statement in their life. And so their only way to express how they're feeling is what they've seen modeled at home. I think sometimes if we had that vision in our head, or if we let ourselves question, gosh, you know, this kid is having this kind of behavior. Why is this kid having this behavior? What happened to this child to make them act that way? Because kids want to be good.
Correct. Listen,
100%.
that was a great ending. Let's end on that. So everybody, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. I love doing this. It's fun, but not next week, correct?
Yep, we're not doing next week. Yep, we'll be off next week, but we'll be back the following week.
All right. And subscribe to the podcast on the podcast feed, wherever you get podcasts, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple. Say hi. There's my daughter. I told you. Like, come on. There she is. Yeah. This is
like, come
Brookie.
hang out with us.
Yeah. All right. All right, everybody. It was great seeing you. Bye. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Until then, we say peace. We're out of here. See ya. Peace. Bye. Bye, everyone.